Does it feel like no matter what you do, there's always something stuck in the back of your throat? That constant need to clear your throat, that thick, uncomfortable mucus that just won't go away, no matter how much you cough or how much water you drink? Maybe you've been dealing with this for months or even years, and you've accepted it as just part of life, maybe blaming allergies or the weather or getting older. But here's what I need you to understand right now. Persistent phlegm and chronic mucus buildup in your throat is not normal, and it is not just part of aging. And in most cases, it is your body sending you a very specific distress signal about something that's happening internally that absolutely needs to be addressed. Because left untreated, the real cause behind chronic phlegm can lead to serious respiratory complications, chronic infections, sleep disruption, and in severe cases, it can contribute to conditions that threaten your quality of life and your independence in ways you never expected from something that started as just a minor irritation in your throat. My name is Dr. Rebecca Parker. I've worked as a physician for over 20 years, and today I focus specifically on senior health. I can't tell you how many of my patients have sat across from me apologizing for bringing up what they considered a trivial complaint, clearing their throat constantly during our appointment, saying things like, "I know this is probably nothing, but this mucus in my throat is driving me absolutely crazy. And it's been going on for so long, and I always have to stop them right there, because chronic persistent phlegm is never nothing. And understanding its real cause is the key to finally getting lasting relief and protecting your respiratory and overall health as you age." You are definitely not alone in this, and I want you to know that across America, millions of seniors struggle with chronic phlegm and persistent mucus every single day, and the numbers are actually staggering. Studies show that post-nasal drip and chronic mucus production affect over 30% of adults over 65, and the rates increase with age. But here's the problem. Most people either self-treat with over-the-counter antihistamines and decongestants that only provide temporary symptom relief while doing nothing about the underlying cause, or they simply suffer through it, because they assume it's just what happens when you get older. And doctors who only have 10 or 15 minutes with a patient often reach for a prescription pad and prescribe medications that dry out your mucous membranes without ever investigating why your body is producing so much mucus in the first place. And that distinction matters enormously, because when you treat the symptom without addressing the root cause, the problem always comes back and often gets progressively worse over time. So before I dive into the real causes and the solutions that actually work, if this is resonating with you and you've been struggling with chronic phlegm and nobody has ever really explained why it's happening or given you solutions that truly last, hit that like button right now, because this information could genuinely change your daily quality of life and help other seniors across America who are suffering in silence with the same frustrating problem. Let me explain what mucus actually is and why your body makes it, because understanding this is fundamental to understanding how to fix the problem. Mucus is not your enemy, even though it certainly feels that way when you're constantly clearing your throat. Mucus is actually one of your body's most important protective substances, and your respiratory system, including your nose, sinuses, throat, and lungs, produces about 1/4 to 1.5 quarts of mucus every single day, even when you feel perfectly fine. This mucus forms a protective lining that traps dust, bacteria, viruses, allergens, and other foreign particles before they can reach your delicate lung tissue and cause infection or inflammation. And it also keeps your airways moist and functioning properly. Under normal, healthy circumstances, you swallow this mucus unconsciously all day and night without ever noticing it. The problem arises when your body starts producing too much mucus, or when the mucus becomes thicker and stickier than normal, because then you can't swallow it fast enough, it accumulates in the back of your throat, and you feel it constantly as that irritating sensation that makes you need to clear your throat over and over and over. Now here's the part that most people, including many doctors, miss. The most common real cause of chronic persistent phlegm in seniors is not allergies, not infections, not the weather, and not simply aging. The number one underlying driver of chronic mucus overproduction in seniors across America is a combination of chronic low-grade inflammation and specific dietary triggers that are constantly irritating your mucous membranes and signaling your body to produce more and more mucus as a protective response. And the most powerful trigger that affects the vast majority of my patients who suffer from chronic phlegm is dairy consumption, and specifically the way that dairy proteins interact with your immune system to drive inflammation and stimulate mucus production in your respiratory tract. Now I know what you're thinking, because I hear this all the time. My doctor never told me dairy causes mucus, and I've eaten dairy my entire life without problems. So why would it suddenly be causing this now? Here's the answer, and it's critically important. As we age, our digestive systems change dramatically. The enzyme lactase, which your body uses to break down lactose, the sugar in dairy products, declines significantly after age 50 in most people. And by the time you're in your 60s and 70s, most Americans have meaningful lactase deficiency, meaning dairy is being poorly digested and incompletely broken down in your gut. When dairy proteins are improperly digested, they trigger an inflammatory immune response. And one of the primary ways your immune system responds to this chronic low-grade inflammation is by signaling your mucous membranes to produce more protective mucus. This happens slowly and gradually, which is why it feels like it crept up on you. Like the dairy you ate your whole life without problems is suddenly causing issues, because the underlying digestive enzyme decline happens gradually over years until finally the threshold is crossed and the symptoms become noticeable and persistent. But here's something even more important that most people need to hear. Dairy is not the only culprit. And for many seniors, it's just one piece of a larger picture. Gluten found in wheat bread, pasta, and crackers, which are staples of the American diet, can cause identical inflammatory responses in many people and trigger chronic mucus production, especially in those with undiagnosed gluten sensitivity, which is far more common in seniors than most people realize. Processed foods loaded with refined sugar, artificial additives, seed oils, and food colorings also drive systemic inflammation that manifests as increased mucus production. And perhaps most surprisingly to many of my patients, acid reflux, which affects a massive proportion of American seniors, is a major driver of chronic throat phlegm, because when stomach acid and digestive enzymes creep up into your esophagus and throat, they irritate the mucous membranes and trigger exactly the same protective mucus overproduction response, which is why so many people with chronic phlegm also notice it's worse after meals or when lying down at night. Ignoring this chronic inflammatory state is genuinely putting your health at risk, because sustained inflammation in your respiratory tract weakens your immune defenses, makes you more vulnerable to respiratory infections like pneumonia, which is a leading cause of hospitalization and death in seniors, contributes to the development of chronic bronchitis and other obstructive respiratory conditions, and interferes with sleep quality in ways that cascade into every other aspect of your health, from cognitive function to cardiovascular health. Every day that you live with untreated chronic phlegm without addressing its root causes is a day your respiratory system is under unnecessary inflammatory stress. And the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to reverse, and the greater the cumulative damage to your airways and immune function. This leads us naturally to the first and most important solution, and one you can start implementing today. A targeted 2-week elimination trial of the primary dietary mucus triggers, starting with dairy. And I want to explain exactly how to do this and why it works so dramatically for so many people. The elimination trial works because it gives your inflamed mucous membranes a chance to calm down and reset without the constant bombardment of inflammatory triggers. And for most people, the results within just 2 weeks are honestly remarkable and feel almost miraculous after months or years of chronic phlegm. Here's your simple protocol for the 2-week dairy elimination. Ingredients and substitutions. Replace whole milk with unsweetened almond milk or oat milk, which are available at every grocery store across America from Walmart to your local supermarket. Replace butter with extra virgin olive oil or avocado oil for cooking. Replace cheese with avocado slices, hummus, or nutritional yeast, which provides a cheesy flavor without the dairy proteins that trigger inflammation. Replace yogurt with coconut milk yogurt, or simply increase your intake of fermented vegetables like sauerkraut and pickles, which provide the same beneficial probiotics without the mucus-triggering dairy proteins. Measurements and timing. You need to be completely dairy-free for a minimum of 14 consecutive days to give your mucous membranes sufficient time to reduce inflammation and for your body to clear the accumulated dairy proteins that are driving the inflammatory response. Even small amounts of dairy, like a splash of milk in your coffee or a small piece of cheese, can reset the inflammatory cycle and invalidate the trial, so you need to be thorough and consistent. Preparation. Read food labels carefully because dairy is hidden in many processed foods under names like casein, whey, lactose, lactalbumin, and butter solids. These hidden dairy proteins cause the same inflammatory mucus response as obvious dairy sources like milk and cheese, so you need to be vigilant about eliminating them from your diet completely during the trial period. How to use and what to expect. Most of my patients notice meaningful reduction in phlegm and throat clearing within the first 5 to 7 days of dairy elimination. And by day 14, the majority report dramatic improvement, often 70 to 80% reduction in chronic mucus that they've been living with for years. After the 2 weeks, you can carefully reintroduce dairy in small amounts and observe whether your symptoms return, which will confirm that dairy is indeed one of your primary triggers. So you can make an informed decision about how much dairy, if any, you want to include in your long-term diet going forward. Let me tell you about Patricia, a 71-year-old woman from Indiana who'd been constantly clearing her throat for over 4 years and had seen multiple doctors, including an ear, nose, and throat specialist who'd scoped her throat and found nothing structurally abnormal and told her it was likely just postnasal drip from age-related changes. She was taking an antihistamine every day, which helped a little, but never completely resolved it, and she felt embarrassed about the constant throat clearing, especially at her church choir rehearsals and family dinners. When I asked her about her diet, the first thing she mentioned was that she drank 2 glasses of milk every day because her mother had always told her to drink milk for her bones, and she ate cheese at almost every meal as a snack. I explained the dairy inflammation mucus connection to her and asked her to try the 2-week elimination, and by day 10 she called my office in absolute disbelief, telling me that for the first time in 4 years she'd gone an entire morning without clearing her throat even once. By day 14, her chronic phlegm was 90% improved, and she said she felt like a completely different person. She went back to choir rehearsal and sang the whole practice without stopping once to clear her throat, and she said she cried all the way home because she'd missed it so much. But that's not all, because dairy elimination, while often the single most powerful intervention, is just the beginning of a comprehensive approach to resolving chronic phlegm. And this leads us to the second powerful solution, which addresses the acid reflux component that contributes to chronic throat mucus in so many seniors. If dairy elimination alone doesn't fully resolve your phlegm, or if you notice your throat clearing is worse after meals, particularly after dinner, or when you lie down to sleep, then acid reflux, or what doctors call laryngopharyngeal reflux, is very likely contributing to your chronic mucus production, and this is something that I see constantly underdiagnosed and undertreated in my senior patients. Unlike classic heartburn, which causes that burning sensation in your chest, laryngopharyngeal reflux often causes almost no chest burning at all, which is why it's called silent reflux, and the symptoms are primarily felt in the throat as chronic mucus, the sensation of something stuck in your throat, frequent throat clearing, a chronic mild cough, hoarseness, especially in the morning, and sometimes difficulty swallowing. If this sounds familiar, then please hear this loud and clear, because untreated acid reflux doesn't just cause throat mucus. It can damage the lining of your esophagus, increasing your risk of esophageal cancer, and it can cause significant damage to your vocal cords and larynx over time. The second solution is a combination of dietary changes and lifestyle modifications that dramatically reduce acid reflux and therefore reduce the reflux-driven mucus production it causes. Elevating the head of your bed by 6 to 8 inches using bed risers or a specially designed wedge pillow is one of the most effective interventions for nighttime reflux, because gravity keeps stomach contents from traveling up your esophagus while you sleep. Eating your largest meal at lunchtime rather than dinner and making dinner a lighter, smaller meal helps, because your digestive system slows significantly at night, and large evening meals sitting in your stomach while you lie down are the primary driver of nighttime reflux. Avoiding your specific reflux trigger foods, which commonly include coffee, alcohol, chocolate, mint, tomatoes, citrus, spicy foods, and fatty fried foods, especially in the evenings, is critically important for reducing the acid load that drives reflux and the chronic mucus it causes. I had a patient named Frank, 68 years old, from Tennessee, who'd been dealing with what he called a constant frog in his throat for about 3 years, especially bad in the mornings and after dinner, but minimal heartburn, so he never connected it to reflux. When I explained silent reflux to him, and we implemented the elevation of his head of bed, along with eliminating his nightly large dinner habit of eating around 8 or 9 p.m., because he worked late, and replacing it with a lighter early dinner and a small protein-rich snack if needed later, his morning throat mucus improved dramatically within 2 weeks and resolved almost completely within a month. He told me he wished someone had explained silent reflux to him years earlier, because he'd been gargling with salt water and using throat sprays for 3 years, when the solution was simply adjusting when and how much he ate at night. Now, if you want access to personalized guidance on identifying your specific mucus triggers, detailed elimination protocol guides, meal plans designed to reduce inflammation and reflux, and comprehensive advice for your unique health situation, consider becoming a channel member where I share exclusive content that goes much deeper into respiratory health and anti-inflammatory nutrition for seniors. You'll get printable guides, detailed protocols, and access to our wonderful community of seniors who are taking control of their health and seeing remarkable improvements. Write in the comments, How long have you been dealing with persistent phlegm, and have you ever connected it to something you eat? Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to finally identify their own trigger and get the relief they've been searching for. The third and most powerful solution combines everything we've discussed into what I call the Complete Respiratory Clarity Protocol, and it adds 2 additional powerful interventions that work synergistically with dietary changes to clear chronic phlegm faster and keep it away long term. These are targeted hydration therapy and mucolytic foods and herbs that actually thin and break down thick mucus so your body can clear it more effectively while your mucous membranes heal. Here's why hydration matters so much and why most seniors are chronically underhydrated in ways that worsen their phlegm dramatically. Your mucus becomes thick and sticky when you're dehydrated because mucus is primarily water. And when your overall body hydration is low, your body conserves water by reducing the water content of your mucus, which makes it thicker and stickier and harder to move and clear. Research shows that seniors have a significantly reduced thirst sensation compared to younger adults, which means by the time you feel thirsty, you may already be meaningfully dehydrated. And this blunted thirst response, combined with concerns about nighttime bathroom trips, causes many seniors to deliberately limit their fluid intake, which makes their chronic phlegm dramatically worse. The solution is to drink consistently throughout the day, even when you don't feel thirsty, aiming for at least 6 to 8 glasses of water and herbal tea daily, which thins your mucus, making it far easier for your body to move and clear it naturally. The most powerful mucolytic beverages that thin mucus naturally and that you can start drinking today include warm ginger tea, because ginger contains compounds called gingerols and shogaols that have potent anti-inflammatory and mucolytic properties, helping to reduce mucus production and thin existing mucus so it can be cleared more easily. And ginger also has antimicrobial properties that help protect against the respiratory infections that chronic phlegm makes you more vulnerable to. Green tea contains specific antioxidants called EGCG that reduce inflammatory signaling in your mucous membranes and have been shown in studies to decrease mucus secretion in respiratory tissues. And perhaps the most powerful and underrated natural mucus remedy that generations of American grandmothers knew about is steam inhalation with eucalyptus, because inhaling steam for 10 to 15 minutes once or twice daily works mechanically to thin and loosen thick mucus, while the eucalyptus provides cineol, which is a natural compound that has been clinically proven to break down mucus and reduce its production. Here's your complete respiratory clarity protocol combining all 3 solutions. Every morning before eating anything, drink a large glass of warm water with a freshly squeezed half lemon and a half teaspoon of raw honey, which reduces morning phlegm by thinning mucus and soothing inflamed mucous membranes while providing antimicrobial and anti-inflammatory compounds. Eliminate dairy completely and reduce gluten-containing foods significantly for at least 2 weeks, as we discussed, and pay attention to your individual response, because your body will give you very clear feedback. Elevate the head of your bed and shift your largest meal to lunchtime to address the silent reflux component that may be driving your nighttime and morning mucus. Throughout the day, drink warm ginger tea or green tea consistently to maintain mucus-thinning hydration and deliver anti-inflammatory compounds to your respiratory tract. And once or twice weekly, especially during American winters when indoor heating dries out your airways, making mucus thicker and more problematic, Do a steam inhalation session with a few drops of eucalyptus oil in a bowl of hot water, leaning over it with a towel over your head for 10 to 15 minutes, which provides almost immediate relief and helps reset your respiratory system. Let me share one final story that captures what's possible when you commit to this complete approach. I had a patient named Walter, 76 years old, from Minnesota, where the winters are brutal and the dry, heated indoor air makes respiratory issues dramatically worse between November and March. He'd been dealing with chronic phlegm for over 6 years, saw 3 different specialists, been put on nasal sprays, antihistamines, and even a trial of antibiotics when his doctors assumed it might be bacterial in origin, and nothing had provided lasting relief. He was exhausted from the constant throat clearing. His wife was frustrated because it disrupted their sleep and their social activities. And he'd started avoiding situations where the throat clearing would be embarrassing. When I went through his diet and lifestyle in detail, I found he was consuming dairy at almost every meal, eating a large dinner late at night, drinking almost no water during the day, and sleeping completely flat. We implemented the complete protocol. Dairy eliminated, evening meals shifted earlier and made smaller, head of bed elevated, warm lemon water every morning, ginger tea throughout the day, and weekly eucalyptus steam sessions. 6 weeks later, Walter walked into my office and stood there for a moment before sitting down, and I noticed immediately that he hadn't cleared his throat once since entering the room, which I'd never seen him do before. He sat down and with the biggest smile said to me, "Doc, this is the longest I've gone without clearing my throat in 6 years." And his wife, who was with him, had tears in her eyes, saying she'd gotten her husband back. His sleep had improved, his energy had come back. He'd rejoined his community volunteer program and his retirement group activities that he'd been avoiding, and he felt like himself again after years of being diminished by something that seemed so small but had taken over his daily life. This is exactly why I'm so passionate about getting this information to as many seniors as possible, because chronic phlegm is treatable, and the real causes are identifiable, and the solutions are accessible and affordable for everyone, not just people who can afford specialists and expensive tests. You don't have to spend one more day constantly clearing your throat and feeling uncomfortable and self-conscious about something that has a real identifiable cause and real effective solutions.